The night before my military commissioning ceremony, I discovered my birth parents had filed an anonymous complaint to revoke my credentials for lack of integrity. The handwriting on the form was unmistakable, my mother's perfect cursive. The same loops and flourishes that once signed permission slips and birthday cards. They thought I was still their obedient daughter, easily broken and controlled. Tomorrow, in front of thousands of witnesses, I would shatter their righteous facade piece by piece. I'd flown medical helicopters through sandstorms. Orchestrating a public stage to expose two people who weaponized morality was just another tactical exercise. My name is Avery Lane, and in 12 hours, I'll either become a commissioned officer in the United States Air Force or watch my parents destroy everything I've built. The email arrived at 11:43 p.m. Its subject line bland enough to slip past any casual glance. Disciplinary review notice, confidential. But the Republic Military Academy seal at the top was real, as was the signature from the Honor Board's administrative office. I sat in my barracks room at Gideon Air Base, dress blues hanging pristine on the closet door, my pilot wings gleaming under the desk lamp. 27 years old, top 5% of my class in rotary wing operations, and someone had just accused me of academic fraud and accepting illegal sponsorship funds. The complaint was anonymous, but the handwriting on the scanned attachment, those distinctive lowercase g's with their tight loops, the way the t's crossed slightly upward, belonged to Deidre Lane, my mother. You okay? Tessa Moreno peered around my door, her own uniform half-pressed. We'd survived flight school together, pulled each other through SEER training, and she knew my tells better than anyone. My parents are here, I said, turning my laptop toward her, and they're trying to get me expelled 12 hours before commissioning. She whistled low, reading over my shoulder. This is insane. They're claiming you falsified your undergraduate transcripts. That scholarship from the Hale Foundation was legitimate. I was there when you got the call. They know that. I pulled up another email, this one from Elias Mercer, the Academy's Civilian Communications Director. He'd forwarded a media inquiry from the local Tribune. Sources close to the Lane family suggest questions about the candidate's integrity and financial dealings. The source had to be Martin Lane, my father, who'd spent 30 years perfecting his righteous pastor act at Cornerstone Baptist. Captain Naomi Brooks knocked and entered without waiting a privilege of being our flight instructor and unofficial mentor. Lane, what's this about the honor board requesting your records? I showed her everything. Brooks had seen me through my worst days in flight training, when I doubted every instinct, questioned every decision. She'd taught me that precision wasn't just about stick and rudder skills, it was about seeing the whole battlefield, anticipating threats before they materialized. They've been planning this, I said, opening a folder I'd hidden in my encrypted drive. Look, 3 days ago, they contacted the base protocol office to remove my foster mother, Ruth Hale, from the VIP seating. Yesterday, Mom tried to access my old credit reports through a third-party service. And tonight, Dad's been making rounds with the journalism pool at the Marriott downtown. You've been tracking them. Brooks raised an eyebrow. For 7 years. I pulled out an external drive from my desk drawer. Every forged document, every manipulated photo, every financial fraud they've committed using my name. They opened 3 credit cards when I was 19, maxed them out, then convinced me I was losing my mind when I found the bills. They intercepted my acceptance letter to the academy, rewrote my FAFSA forms, even hired someone to hack my email when I started cutting contact. Tessa grabbed my shoulders. Avery, this is evidence of multiple felonies. Why haven't you? Because I wanted to be free of them, not trapped in a legal battle where they'd play the heartbroken parents. I stood, walking to the window where the base's floodlights illuminated tomorrow's parade grounds. But they came here, to my commissioning. They want to humiliate me in front of my entire chain of command. Brooks studied me with those calculating eyes that had evaluated hundreds of pilot candidates. What's your play? Lane. I smiled the first real smile I'd felt all evening. Operation Valkyrie. Tomorrow's ceremony includes a new segment Elias helped me arrange. Honor and Integrity Roll Call, a chance to recognize mentors and family who exemplify military values. My parents think they're getting a special recognition. They even RSVP'd for the exclusive pre-ceremony reception. And instead, 3,000 people, including 47 journalists and a live-streamed audience, will watch documented evidence of fraud, identity theft, and witness tampering displayed on the main LED screen while I maintain perfect military bearing. I turned back to them. They wanted a public spectacle. They're going to get one. Brooks nodded slowly. You'll need authentication for those documents. Legal coverage? Already handled. The base JAG office has copies, sealed and verified. The State Attorney General's office has been alerted to stand by for a formal complaint tomorrow at 1400 hours. Outside, the last notes of taps echoed across the base. Tomorrow. I'd raise my right hand and swear an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My parents had taught me about enemies. They'd just never expected me to recognize them in the mirror they held up to my face. The first time Martin Lane broke my finger, I was 8 years old. He didn't mean to, or so he claimed to the emergency room nurse. It was simply an accident during discipline. I'd forgotten to say grace before sneaking a cookie, and when he grabbed my hand to pray over my sin, the pinky snapped. Children need structure, he told the doctor, his pastor's collar lending weight to every word. Sometimes love requires firmness. That was the beginning of my education in control. By 12, I'd learned the rhythm of their manipulation like a cadet learns drill formations. Martin wielded scripture like a weapon, finding verses to justify every restriction, every punishment. Honor thy father and mother. Avery. It's not a suggestion, it's a commandment. Meanwhile, Deidre managed the practical chains. She opened a joint checking account for college savings when I turned 16, then drained my part-time job earnings monthly. Family shares everything, she'd say, reviewing my pay stubs with laser focus. Your success is our success. The summer before my senior year of high school, I'd saved $900 in cash, hidden in a tampon box under my bathroom sink money for SAT prep courses they'd refused to pay for. Deidre found it during one of her cleaning inspections. She didn't take it directly. Instead, she deposited it into our account, then wrote a check to Martin's church for the exact amount. The memo line read, Avery's tithing commitment. We're teaching you gratitude, she explained as I sobbed. Someday you'll thank us. I started documenting everything that night. Receipt photos on an old iPod they didn't know about. Screenshots emailed to a secret account. Audio recordings on a digital recorder I'd bought at a pawn shop 2 towns over. The evidence grew like armor, each piece protecting me from gaslighting that followed every incident. You're remembering it wrong. We never said that? Why would we do something so cruel? You always were dramatic. The acceptance letter to Republic Military Academy came to my school counselor's office. Not home. Mrs. Chin. No relation, despite the name, had watched me forge parent signatures on field trip forms for years, noticed the bruises I'd blamed on volleyball, understood why I stayed after school until janitors kicked me out. She'd helped me apply in secret, arranged for all correspondence to route through her. Military structure, she'd said, handing me the thick envelope. But your choice, your command. Martin found out 2 weeks before graduation when a neighbor congratulated him at church. The confrontation lasted 6 hours. He quoted Timothy, Ephesians, Romans, anywhere Paul mentioned women being silent or submissive. Deidre took a different approach. She'd already opened credit cards in my name. She informed me, 3 of them, maxed out. If you leave, you'll start your military career $20,000 in debt. Or you can stay home, go to community college, and we'll handle it together. I left anyway, hitchhiked to the bus station at 3 a.m. with everything I owned in a backpack. Ruth Hale, my former Sunday school teacher who'd quietly disagreed with Martin's interpretations for years, picked me up at the Kansas City depot. She'd received my call at 2:15 a.m. and driven 4 hours without question. Real love doesn't require obedience, she said, handing me tissues as I shook in her passenger seat. It requires respect. The identity theft nearly ended my military career before it began. Security clearance investigations don't look kindly on financial fraud. But I'd kept everything: the forged applications with Deidre's handwriting, the timestamps showing I was in basic training when purchases were made, the recorded call where she'd impersonated me to a creditor. The investigation took 18 months, but ultimately cleared me and flagged them. They switched tactics after that, love-bombing phases where they'd send care packages and tearful letters about forgiveness. Then, when I didn't respond, the ammunition would come out. Calls to my commanding officers about my mental instability, anonymous tips to base security about drug use. Once, Deidre even showed up at a flight simulation exam claiming a family emergency, trying to get me pulled from training. I kept every letter, recorded every voicemail, documented every false report. 3 years ago, when I made the dean's list and got selected for advanced rotor operations, Martin sent an email to the entire congregation prayer chain. Please pray for our daughter Avery, who has lost her way in pursuit of worldly ambitions. The military has corrupted her values and turned her from family. 200 people I'd grown up with received that message. Most believed it. But I'd learned something in those cockpits. Hovering over combat zones and hurricane disasters control isn't about forcing compliance. It's about understanding every variable, predicting system failures, and maintaining composure when everything goes sideways. My parents had taught me about control through cruelty. Tomorrow, I'd show them what it looked like when wielded with precision. The war room was Elias Mercer's office, and by 2:30 a.m., it looked like a command center. Tessa had brought coffee and her laptop. Brooks arrived with base regulations printed and tabbed, and Elias himself had 3 monitors running simultaneous feeds from tomorrow's venue setup. Your parents have been busy, Elias said, pulling up his media contacts dashboard. The Tribune received an anonymous tip at 11 p.m. about a cadet with falsified credentials. Channel 7 got the same story at midnight. Your father's been making rounds. I've got confirmed he met with Patricia Hawkins from the Military Times in the hotel bar until 1 a.m. He's wearing his collar, Tessa observed, zooming in on security footage from the Marriott. Full minister costume for credibility. I studied the screen. Martin had perfected this performance over decades: the concerned father, the moral authority, the grieving parent of a wayward child. What about Deidre? More surgical, Brooks said, sliding a paper across the desk. She filed a formal complaint with the Base Honor Committee at 4:47 p.m. yesterday, just before offices closed. Used the emergency ethics hotline to ensure it would flag immediately, but too late for proper investigation before tomorrow's ceremony. The complaint was damning in its specificity. Falsified undergraduate transcripts, scholarship fraud involving the Hale Foundation, unauthorized use of family financial resources for academy preparation. Each allegation crafted to require extensive investigation, designed to suspend my commissioning indefinitely. Here's the interesting part. Elias pulled up another document. The complaint includes details about your high school grades that aren't in any official academy records, information only someone with access to your original applications would have, or someone who helped fill them out, I said quietly. Deidre did my FAFSA forms senior year. She insisted on helping with all my college applications, which means she's been planning this for years, Brooks concluded, keeping copies, waiting for maximum impact. Tessa's laptop chimed. Speaking of impact, look what just posted on the Cornerstone Baptist Facebook page. She turned the screen toward us. A prayer request from Martin, posted 1 hour ago. Please lift up our family tomorrow as we attend a significant milestone. The Lord sometimes calls us to difficult truths for the sake of righteousness. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Proverbs 27:5. 600 reactions already, Tessa noted. Comments are intense. I didn't need to read them. I knew that congregation. Those people who'd watched me grow up and chose to believe Martin's narrative over their own observations. They'd witnessed tomorrow's ceremony through social media, primed to see me as the ungrateful daughter who needed humbling. They've also restructured the VIP seating. Elias pulled up the ceremony layout. Your foster mother, Ruth Hale. Her reserved seat was canceled yesterday. But here, he highlighted 2 spots. Front row, direct sightline to the podium. Martin and Deidre Lane, listed as Distinguished Family of Honor Graduate. Who authorized that? Brooks demanded. Nora Pike, I said, recognizing the administrative signature. She processes VIP requests for base events, also handles document verification for the honor committee. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my evidence files. And she just deposited $800 into her personal account. Timestamp 6:14 p.m. yesterday. Origin a Cash App transfer from DL. Enterprises Deidre's consulting firm. Brooks whistled low. They bribed administrative staff. We need to loop in security forces, Tessa said. This is no. I interrupted. That's what they want. An investigation means chaos, postponement, whispers about scandal. They don't want me expelled, they want me diminished, commissioned under a cloud of suspicion, my career forever asterisked. I stood, walked to Elias's whiteboard, and started sketching. The ceremony has 5 segments: opening colors, keynote address, commissioning oath, awards presentation, and closing reception. Where's the new addition? Between awards and reception, Elias said, the honor and integrity roll call. 10 minutes allocated, though we can extend if needed. Perfect. I drew timeline marks. They'll expect me to be rattled, off balance from the allegations. Instead, I'll be following exact protocol. Brooks, I need you to file an Article 37 disclosure request that's the military equivalent of FOIA for internal documents. Right. For training and demonstration purposes, yes. Immediate release authorized for educational content during official ceremonies. Good. Everything I present will be legally obtained. Officially verified evidence. Elias, the LED walls, can they display documents in real time, 4K resolution? Every signature, every timestamp will be crystal clear. And the live stream. 3 camera angles minimum, full audio capture. Archive automatically uploads to base servers and YouTube simultaneously. Once it's live, it can't be deleted without a court order. Tessa grinned. You're going to evidence bomb them on stage. I'm going to tell the truth, I corrected. With receipts, in front of 3,000 witnesses, including the command staff who'll decide if these allegations deserve investigation, and the journalists my father's been grooming. Brooks leaned back, studying me. You know once you do this, there's no going back, no reconciliation. There never was, I said. They made sure of that when they decided to attack me here, in the one place I built without them. I looked at each of them. By tomorrow at 1500 hours, everyone will know exactly who Martin and Deidre Lane really are, and they'll have brought it entirely on themselves. Elias started typing rapidly. I'll need to adjust the program. What's your opener? I smiled, cold and precise. We start with gratitude for everyone who actually helped me get here, and then we contrast. The plan was surgical, every move calculated. They'd prepared for a battle. I was preparing an execution. By 6 a.m., the base was stirring, and I was in the JAG office with Captain Lisa Brennan, the legal assistance attorney who'd been tracking my case since the identity theft investigation 3 years prior. She reviewed each document with prosecutorial precision. This check imaged Deidre's payment to Nora Pike. How did you obtain it? Pike posted a photo of her blessing on Instagram stories at 8 p.m. last night. She's holding the check, thanking God for unexpected provisions. The routing number, her signature, and the Cash App transaction ID are all visible. Brennan nodded, scanning it into the classified system. Legal stupidity works in our favor. The Honor Committee complaint. Brooks filed the Article 37 request at 5 this morning. Since it directly impacts today's commissioning, expedited release was approved. I handed her the stamped authorization. Everything in that complaint becomes public record the moment I reference it during an official ceremony segment. In the credit fraud documents, Already part of federal record from the previous investigation. Public domain. Case number included for verification. Brennan leaned back, a slight smile crossing her usually stern features. You're using their own weapon against them. They made this public, so public forum rules apply. My phone buzzed. Tessa. Your parents just arrived at the venue. They're setting up a camera crew. They brought their own media, Brennan asked, reading over my shoulder. Church volunteers, I explained. Martin always documents his moral victories for sermon illustrations. They're expecting to capture my humiliation for next Sunday's service. Instead, they'll record their own confession. Brennan pulled out official letterhead. I'm drafting a cease and desist order that will be served immediately following the ceremony. Also, Detective Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit will be present in civilian capacity. If they make any additional false statements during the event, it becomes criminal conspiracy in real time. Brooks knocked and entered. Lane, we have a problem. Nora Pike just submitted an addendum to the complaint. She's claiming she personally witnessed you forge Ruth Hale's signature on scholarship documents. I felt the familiar cold fury that had carried me through every flight emergency. She's doubling down. Gets worse. She's scheduled to speak during the VIP recognition segment as a concerned staff member who values integrity. I looked at Brennan. Can she do that? Technically, yes. Base employees can be recognized during ceremonies. Brennan pulled up the regulations. But here's what Pike doesn't know. Lying in an official statement during a military proceeding is Article 107, making false official statements. Maximum punishment includes federal charges. Elias appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. The media setup is complete. Also, I've got something you need to see. He handed me a tablet showing an email thread. Your father sent this to the base commander 20 minutes ago. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation. Martin expressed fatherly concern about my mental state, suggested the pressure of military service had caused a break from reality, and offered to privately handle the family matter if the commissioning could be postponed for psychiatric evaluation. He's trying to paint me as unstable, I said. The commander forwarded it to me with a note. Elias scrolled down. Quote, proceed with ceremony as planned. Document everything. Legal Affairs is standing by. My hands steadied. The command structure saw through Martin's performance. Pike's walking into a trap she doesn't know exists, Brooks observed. The moment she lies on that stage, she's facing federal charges. We need to give her an out, I said, surprising everyone. I want justice, not unnecessary casualties. Brennan raised an eyebrow. She took a bribe to file false documents. Because my parents are master manipulators, they probably convinced her she was doing the right thing, protecting the military from a fraud. I pulled up Pike's personnel file. Single mother, 2 kids, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. $800 would seem like salvation. What are you proposing? Brooks asked. Elias, can you add a disclaimer to the program? Something about the honor and integrity segment featuring verified evidence, and any participant wanting to review documentation before speaking should check with JAG. That's surprisingly merciful, Brennan said. It's strategic, I corrected. When Pike sees that warning and backs out, it proves consciousness of guilt. When my parents don't back out, it proves malicious intent. I want them to have every opportunity to retreat. So, when they don't, no one can claim they were ambushed. Tessa texted again. Your mom's trying to access the AV system. Says she has additional materials to present. I showed the message to the group. She probably has manufactured evidence, photoshopped pictures, edited recordings. Let her try, Elias said. Our system requires authentication through base IT. Any file she submits gets metadata scanned. Doctored materials will flag immediately. Brooks stood. It's 800 hours. Ceremony starts at 1300. You need to get ready. I looked around the room at these people who'd become my real family, chosen through respect. Not blood, earned through trust, not demanded through guilt. One more thing, Brennan said, pulling out an official document. Given the circumstances, the Attorney General's office has agreed to file charges at exactly 1400 hours. The arrest warrants will be issued during the closing reception. They'll be arrested at my commissioning, only if they're still on base, which they will be, if they're waiting for their moment of triumph. I signed the complainant form with steady hands. Martin and Deidre Lane had driven 16 hours to destroy their daughter in public. Instead, they'd driven straight into a perfectly prepared defensive position. The hunter had become the hunted, and they didn't even know it yet. The Patriot Pavilion at Gideon Air Base could hold 3,000 people, and by noon, every seat was filling. I stood backstage in my dress blues, watching the feeds from Elias's tablet as he orchestrated the final preparations. The LED walls flanking the stage showed rotating images of Academy achievements, but in 2 hours, they'd display something far more revealing. "Mic check on the podium," a technician called out. "Recording levels optimal. Rear-facing cameras." Elias asked. "Positioned and locked. We'll catch every reaction from the VIP section." I watched my parents on the security monitor. They'd arrived early, Martin glad-handing every uniform he encountered, Deidre adjusting and readjusting their camera equipment. They'd claimed spots with perfect sightlines, their church volunteers stationed at strategic angles. "Your foster mother just arrived," Tessa said, appearing beside me. "Ruth Hale. We've got her seated in Section B as planned." "How does she look?" "Proud. Brought tissues and a camera." "Also," Tessa smiled, "she's wearing the brooch you sent her for Christmas. The wings." My throat tightened. Ruth had saved me, literally driven through the night to pull me from hell. She deserved to see this victory. "Pike's here," Brooks announced, joining us. She looks nervous, saw the program addendum about verification requirements and went pale. The program now included a boxed disclaimer. The Honor and Integrity Roll Call features authenticated documentation verified through official channels. All participants are encouraged to review materials with Judge Advocate General representatives before presentation. "Has she approached Jag?" I asked. "Negative. She's sitting in the back, checking her phone every 30 seconds. Elias pulled up the presentation queue on his master tablet. "Your evidence displays are loaded in sequence. Each document will appear for 15 seconds, enough time for cameras to capture and audience to read. The metadata strips are visible timestamps, authentication codes, case numbers. What about my parents' attempt to upload materials? 17 files submitted at 10:45, all flagged for manipulation. Their evidence includes photos with EXIF data showing editing software, documents with font mismatches, and an audio file with obvious splice marks." He grinned. It sent them a polite message that technical difficulties prevented upload. Captain Brennan arrived, Detective Morrison beside her in a sharp civilian suit. "Federal marshals are on standby at the base gates," she informed us quietly. "The arrest warrants go active at 1400 hours. If your parents try to leave before then, base security has been instructed to conduct a routine verification that will delay them." "The media pool is fascinating," Morrison added, consulting his phone. "Your father's been working them hard, but 3 journalists have already fact-checked his claims. Patricia Hawkins from Military Times found discrepancies in his timeline. She's very interested in the actual story now." The base commander's aide appeared. "Colonel Martinez wants to see you. Lieutenant Lane." I found the colonel in his ready room, his expression unreadable. "At ease. Lane, I've reviewed everything, the original complaint, your evidence file, Captain Brennan's brief. This is unusual." "Sir, he raised a hand. "I'm not criticizing. Your parents chose to make this public. They involved my base, my ceremony, my commission process. You're responding within legal and military protocols." He stood, straightening his uniform. "I'll be watching from the command section. Whatever happens, conduct yourself as an officer. Clear." "Crystal, sir." I returned to find Elias making final adjustments. "I've restructured the roll call segment. You'll start with authentic supporters Ruth Hale, Captain Brooks, 2 other mentors. Build credibility and emotional foundation. Then you pivot to addressing the allegations directly. The transition. You'll say something like, 'However, not everyone who claims to support a soldier's journey has honest intentions. Today, in the spirit of military transparency and integrity, I must address false allegations made against me and present evidence of the true perpetrators. Brooks checked her watch. 12:30 hours. Final brief. We gathered in a tight circle, my chosen family, my real support system. Remember, Brooks said, you're not attacking. You're defending with truth. Stay calm, professional, clinical. Let the evidence speak. When they realize what's happening, they'll react, Brennan warned. Your father will try to grandstand, make it about religious persecution or family values. Your mother might play victim. Do not engage directly. State facts, show documents, continue the presentation. Security will move if they rush the stage, Morrison added. We have protocols for disruption. Tessa gripped my shoulder. You've survived their worst for 27 years. This is just one more mission. Elias handed me the final program. The Honor and Integrity roll call was highlighted in gold, my name listed as presenter. Below, in small print, authenticated by Base Legal Affairs, verified by Criminal Investigation Division. Places everyone, the stage manager called. Processional begins in 15 minutes. I looked once more at the monitor showing my parents. Deidre was applying lipstick, checking her appearance in a compact. Martin was reviewing notes, probably his spontaneous proud father speech he planned to give. They had no idea they were sitting in a carefully constructed kill box. Hey, Tessa said quietly. You sure about this last chance to just do a standard ceremony? I thought about 8-year-old me with a broken finger, teenager me having my savings stolen, young adult me fighting credit fraud while learning to fly helicopters. Every moment they'd tried to break me had instead forged me into someone unbreakable. They came to my house, I said simply. They entered my world, tried to destroy what I built. Now they learn what happens when you attack someone who's been trained to fight back. The opening music began the Air Force song echoing across the pavilion. 3,000 people stood as the color guard entered. I took my place in line, wings gleaming, shoulders back. Showtime. The ceremony moved with military precision through its opening segments. The national anthem, the invocation, the keynote address from General Patricia Santos about integrity in service. I sat with my fellow candidates, back straight, eyes forward, hyper-aware of my parents in the front row. Martin kept turning to whisper to church volunteers, pointing at me. Deidre held her phone steady. Recording. At 13:45, we took our commissioning oath. 200 voices speaking in unison. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The words carried extra weight today. Some enemies wore uniforms of foreign nations. Others wore Sunday clothes and parental smiles. The awards presentation followed. Honor graduates, distinguished achievements, leadership recognition. When they called my name for the Aviation Excellence Award, I caught Deidre's expression on the monitor, smug satisfaction, as if my success was her accomplishment. She'd post about her daughter the pilot tomorrow, if her plan worked. Finally, at 14:20 hours, Colonel Martinez announced the special segment. Ladies and gentlemen, before our closing reception, we have a new tradition to introduce. The Honor and Integrity Roll Call, where our graduates recognize those whose support exemplified military values. Lieutenant Avery Lane will present. I rose, walked to the podium with measured steps. The LED screens flickered to life behind me. My hands were steady as I adjusted the microphone. Good afternoon. The path to these wings wasn't traveled alone. I'd like to recognize those who demonstrated true integrity in their support. I started safe, building foundation. Ruth Hale. The screens showed Ruth's photo, her kind eyes bright with pride. She stood in Section B as applause rippled through the crowd. When I was 18 and homeless after escaping an abusive situation, Ruth drove 4 hours at 2 in the morning to get me. She co-signed my first apartment lease, taught me about boundaries, and showed me that love doesn't require payment in obedience. The audience warmth was palpable. Ruth wiped her eyes, hand over her heart. Captain Naomi Brooks. My instructor stood at attention as her photo appeared. Who taught me that precision isn't about perfection, it's about truth, about seeing situations clearly, documenting everything, and letting facts speak louder than accusations? More applause. I felt Martin shifting in his seat, probably wondering when his recognition would come. However, I continued, my voice hardening slightly, not everyone who claims to support a soldier's journey has honest intentions. Today, in the spirit of military transparency and the integrity we swear to uphold, I must address false allegations made against my character and present evidence of the true perpetrators. The warmth evaporated. Confusion rippled through the crowd. The screens changed. The Honor Committee complaint appeared, highlighted sections visible even from the back rows. At 11:43 last night, an anonymous complaint was filed claiming I committed scholarship fraud and falsified transcripts. The handwriting analysis, completed this morning by base investigators, the screen split, showing the complaint beside a known sample of Deidre's writing, matching points highlighted in red, identifies my mother, Deidre Lane, as the author. Gasps echoed through the pavilion. Deidre's face went white. Martin started to stand, but Detective Morrison appeared at the end of their row, his presence a silent warning. Furthermore, this complaint contained information from my original academy application, documents that were supposed to be sealed. Only someone who helped complete those applications would have access. The screen showed FAFSA forms with Deidre's signature as preparer. The same person who filed fraudulent financial aid documents to maintain control. This is outrageous, Martin's voice boomed, but Colonel Martinez stood, his look silencing my father instantly. I continued, clinical and cold. Mrs. Nora Pike, administrative assistant, was scheduled to speak today about integrity. Pike shrank in her back row seat as heads turned. She received $800 last night to facilitate this complaint and manipulate VIP seating. The check image appeared. Pike's Instagram post beside it, transaction records below. Mrs. Pike, you have the opportunity to address this now, with JAG present, or face federal charges for accepting bribes and making false official statements. Pike fled, literally running for the exit. Security let her go. Brennan had been right about giving her an out. But let's address the actual fraud, I said, clicking to the next slide. 3 credit cards opened in my name when I was 19. The applications appeared, Deidre's handwriting on each, my forged signature circled, $22,000 in debt I didn't create, used to control and sabotage my independence. Martin found his voice again. You ungrateful, Mr. Lane, I said directly into the microphone, my voice carrying over his. Would you like to explain to 3,000 witnesses, including federal investigators, why you met with journalists last night to plant false stories, or why you sent an email to the base commander this morning suggesting I needed psychiatric evaluation? The screens showed his email, the security footage from the hotel bar with Patricia Hawkins, his prayer request from Facebook. Every document shown today has been verified by base legal affairs and criminal investigation, I announced. Case numbers are displayed for public verification. This isn't accusation, it's evidence. Martin and Deidre were both standing now. Deidre pulling at Martin's arm, trying to leave, but it was 14:28. 2 minutes until the warrants went active. You want to leave? I asked, my voice carrying clearly. Go ahead, but know that federal marshals are waiting at the gates. Identity theft, fraud, bribery, conspiracy to commit libel, your choices have consequences. The pavilion was dead silent except for the whir of cameras, their church volunteers still recording, journalists capturing every second, the base live stream broadcasting to thousands. I earned these wings despite you, I said, looking directly at them. Not because of you. Despite your theft, your manipulation, your attempts to destroy what you couldn't control. You came here to humiliate me, to break me one last time. Instead, you've shown everyone exactly who you are. 14:30 hours. Morrison stepped forward, badge visible. Martin Lane, Deidre Lane, you're under arrest for federal identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. My parents were led away in handcuffs as 3,000 people watched, their own camera crew catching every moment. I remained at the podium, rigid, professional. Only when they disappeared through the exit did I speak again. "To those who truly supported me, Ruth Hale, Captain Brooks, my fellow pilots, and everyone who chose to see truth over manipulation, thank you. Integrity isn't about perfection. It's about accountability." I returned to my seat as the pavilion exploded in applause, not the polite acknowledgement of before, but thunderous support. Fellow officers stood, saluting. Ruth was crying openly, proud tears. The ceremony concluded with the planned reception, but the energy had shifted completely. Justice had been served alongside champagne and cake. My wings caught the light as I stood among my real family, the one I'd chosen, the one that chose me back. The reception was supposed to begin immediately, but the pavilion remained frozen in stunned silence for 30 seconds after Morrison led my parents away. Then Patricia Hawkins from Military Times stood and began clapping. One journalist became 10, became 100, became 3,000 people on their feet. I stood at the podium, maintaining military bearing as the applause washed over me. Behind me, the LED screens still displayed the final evidence slide, the arrest warrant numbers, fresh from federal processing. Colonel Martinez approached the podium, and I stepped aside. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice commanded instant attention. "What you've witnessed today is unprecedented, but not unauthorized. Lieutenant Lane followed proper protocols, submitted evidence through appropriate channels, and demonstrated the exact integrity we demand of our officers. The reception will commence in 10 minutes. But I wasn't done. Not quite. "Colonel," I said quietly, "may I have one more minute?" He studied me, then nodded, stepping back. I returned to the microphone. "There's one more piece of evidence I need to present. Not for legal purposes, those wheels are already turning. This is for the record." The screens changed to show a handwritten letter, dated 3 years ago. "This is the last letter my mother sent before I cut contact. I've never shared it publicly." I began reading, my voice steady despite the words. "Avery, you are nothing without us. Every achievement you claim came from our sacrifice. You owe us your success, your earnings, your obedience. Family means ownership. Love means control. If you continue this military delusion, we will destroy you before we let you embarrass us." I let the words hang in the air. I kept this letter as a reminder, not of their threats, but of my promise to myself that I would succeed not despite them, but completely independent of them, that their poison wouldn't infect my future. I looked directly at Ruth in Section B. Real family doesn't threaten destruction. Real love doesn't demand payment. The screen changed one final time. A split image on the left, the forged credit applications, the false complaints, the bribery check. On the right, my wings, my commission certificate, my flight records. They chose fraud. I chose flight. They chose manipulation. I chose service. They chose to attack. I chose to defend with truth. Martin's voice suddenly boomed from the back of the pavilion. He was fighting Morrison's custody, his pastor's projection carrying even without a microphone. "You ungrateful child, I gave you life. I gave you everything. This is how you honor your father, with humiliation, with lies." I lifted the microphone, my voice cutting clean. "With evidence, Martin. With receipts. With the truth you've spent decades running from." I pulled out a small folder from the podium. "Oh, and that sermon you gave in 2018 about children who betray their parents. The one where you said I was possessed by rebellious spirits. I have the video. Your congregation sent it to me, concerned about your mental state." Deidre's shriek pierced the air. "You recorded us. You violated our privacy. You committed fraud in writing." I responded calmly. "You submitted false federal documents. You bribed a government employee. Privacy doesn't protect criminal conspiracy." Morrison and another marshal finally wrestled them toward the exit, but Martin managed one more proclamation. "God will judge you for this." "Probably," I acknowledged into the microphone. "But today, the federal court system will judge you. And unlike your God, they require evidence, which I've provided extensively." They disappeared through the doors, still fighting, still screaming about betrayal and damnation. Their own camera crew, the church volunteers, had captured everything, their faces cycling through shock, recognition, and horror as they realized they'd been documenting their pastor's crimes. I turned back to the now silent crowd. "I apologize for the disruption to what should be a celebration, but when someone brings war to your doorstep, you don't get to choose the battlefield." I found Captain Brooks in the crowd. "A wise instructor once told me that in aviation, we have a saying: aviate, navigate, communicate. First, fly the plane, survive the immediate threat, then figure out where you're going. Only then do you explain to others what happened." I gestured to the screens behind me. I've been aviating through abuse for 19 years, navigating toward freedom for 9. Today, finally, I got to communicate, to explain, to prove that what happened to me was real, deliberate, and criminal. The base chaplain, Major Rebecca Torres, stood from her position in the military clergy section. "Lieutenant Lane, would you like me to offer a prayer?" "No, thank you, Major," I replied. I've had enough of prayers used as weapons. Instead, I lifted my commission certificate. Let's celebrate what's real. These wings, this commission, the choice to serve something greater than blood or manipulation. I stepped away from the podium, and this time the applause was different, not just support, but understanding. Several people in the crowd, I could see it in their faces, recognized themselves in my story, recognized their own toxic families, their own battles for independence. Ruth made her way to the stage, and I met her at the steps. She pulled me into an embrace that smelled like vanilla and safety, whispering, "You did it, sweetheart. You broke free." "We did it," I corrected, loud enough for the nearby crowd to hear. Everyone who chose to see truth, who refused to enable them, who helped me document and build this case. Real family isn't about blood, it's about choice, and I choose all of you. The LED screens shifted to the official reception announcement, the moment finally breaking. But as people moved toward the refreshment areas, the conversations weren't about the weather or assignments. They were about courage, about truth, about the price of freedom from toxic bonds. Elias appeared at my elbow. The live stream has 47,000 viewers and climbing. The hashtag #DocEvidenceNotExcuses is trending. I thought about all the young people trapped in similar situations, being told that family meant accepting abuse, that honor meant silence, that love meant ownership. Good, I said. Let them see that fighting back is possible, that documentation defeats denial, that sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with federal warrant numbers and a public audience. The reception transformed into something extraordinary. Officers I'd never met approached with their own stories: toxic parents, manipulative families, the price of breaking free. A brigadier general pulled me aside, her voice low. "My mother did something similar 20 years ago. I didn't have your courage. I just ran. You stood and fought. That matters." Captain Brooks found me by the cake table at 1500 hours, exactly when the arrest processing would be complete. She handed me a small velvet box. "What's this? Open it." Inside lay a pin, not official military insignia, but something more personal. 3 words etched in silver: integrity first, always. "The squadron had it made this morning," she explained. "After Elias briefed us on your plan, we voted unanimously. You exemplified what those words mean." Tessa appeared with her phone. "You need to see this. The church volunteers posted their footage. The video showed everything from my parents' perspective: their confident arrival, their satisfaction during the early ceremony, then the slow-motion collapse of their control. The comments section was brutal in its clarity. I always wondered why Pastor Lane's sermons about family felt so threatening. My kids went to youth group with Avery. We all knew something was wrong. Hiding abuse behind God's name is blasphemy. Their own congregation is turning on them. Tessa observed. No, I corrected. Their congregation is finally free to speak the truth they've always known. Ruth joined us, carrying a champagne glass filled with sparkling cider she knew I didn't drink. The district attorney called Brennan. Your parents are being held without bail pending federal charges. The identity theft alone carries up to 15 years. Do you feel guilty? She asked gently, studying my face. I considered the question. Somewhere in a federal holding cell, Martin and Deidre Lane were experiencing consequences for the first time in their lives. No congregation to manipulate, no daughter to control, no false righteousness to hide behind, just concrete walls and the truth they'd spent decades avoiding. No, I said finally. I feel free. Patricia Hawkins from Military Times approached with her recorder. Lieutenant Lane, one question for the record. Your parents claimed this was about dishonor, about exposing fraud. Instead, you exposed them. What would you say to other military members dealing with similar family situations? I looked directly at her recorder, thinking of every young airman, soldier, sailor, and Marine who might be listening. Document everything. Build your support network outside blood relations. Use official channels and legal protections. And remember, wearing this uniform means you've sworn to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Sometimes the domestic ones share your DNA. That doesn't make them less dangerous. It makes them more so, because they know exactly where to strike. And the revenge aspect, she pressed. Some would say public humiliation was excessive. They came to my commissioning to destroy my career publicly. I defended myself with truth. Publicly. They weaponized family bonds. I weaponized facts. The humiliation was their choice. They could have walked away at any moment before 14:30 hours. They chose to stay and fight. They lost. As the sun moved toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the parade grounds, the reception began winding down, but the conversations continued. Clusters of people sharing stories, exchanging contact information, building networks of chosen family. Elias made one final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, the live stream video will remain permanently archived on the base's public affairs page, for transparency, for truth, for anyone who needs to see that standing up to abuse is possible. I stood with my chosen family as the last guests departed. Brennan confirmed the federal prosecutor was confident about conviction. Morrison reported my parents had already turned on each other, each claiming the other masterminded the fraud. The church had announced an emergency board meeting to discuss their pastor's arrest, but none of that mattered anymore. They were now just a closed chapter in my story, not the authors of it. As the cleaning crew arrived, I took one last look at the pavilion where I'd fought my final battle against Martin and Deidre Lane. Tomorrow, I'd report to flight duty. Next week, I'd ship out to my first operational assignment. The future stretched ahead, unlimited and uncontrolled by anyone but me. Ready to go? Brooks asked. I touched the wings on my chest, then the new pin she'd given me. Yes, ma'am, I've got birds to fly. We walked out together, my real family, my chosen tribe leaving the battlefield behind. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't the public exposure or the federal charges. It was this, walking away whole, surrounded by love that didn't demand payment, toward a future they couldn't touch. My parents had tried to clip my wings. Instead, they'd taught me how to soar. The last thing I heard as we left was someone from the cleaning crew, looking at the LED screens still frozen on the arrest warrant numbers. Damn, she really brought receipts. Yes, I did. And I regret nothing. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think about standing up to toxic family members. Don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories of courage and justice, and share your own experiences. Sometimes the best revenge really is massive success, served with evidence and federal warrant numbers.